Good evening, all. On the behalf of IAP Digital Media Team, I, Dr. Sonil Singh, welcomes you all and wishes you happy Women's Day. Topic for today's webinar is carpal tunnel syndrome in pregnancy. Resource person for today's webinar is Dr. Shweta Pradhan ma'am. Moderator for today's webinar is Dr. Priyanka Jain. I will request you all to subscribe our YouTube channel IAP India. For details of all upcoming webinars, you can also follow IAP India on other social media like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. I request our moderator to take over and start the session. Over to you, Dr. Priyanka.
Hello, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Hello, everyone. A very good evening to all and wishing you all a very happy Women's Day. Two lines I want to say on this occasion कि अपना ताज खुद खरीदने की हैसियत बनाना, अपना ताज खुद खरीदने की हैसियत बनाना ताकि इज्जत के लिए किसी पुरुष का मोहताज ना होना पड़े. Thank you. Myself, Dr. Priyanka Jain, on behalf of Team Kota Rajasthan, shows our gratitude to Dr. Sanjeev Jha sir, Dr. Ruchi ma'am, Dr. Sakina ma'am, Dr. Vinita ma'am, and especially Dr. Ritu ma'am. A very special thanks to our IAP technical team for providing such a great platform of sharing knowledge. Today, we are having a webinar on the topic carpal tunnel syndrome in pregnancy. We are indeed privileged to have noted educationist and an eminent speaker, Dr. Shweta Pradhan ma'am. She is a senior specialist, women's health therapist. She is also sexual dysfunction and pregnancy massage specialist. She is an advanced clinical vaginal pessary practitioner in Liverpool University, UK. She is well-known clinical educator and a mentor. So a heartiest welcome to Shweta Pradhan ma'am. Shweta Pradhan ma'am, please.
Hello. Good afternoon. Hello, how are you?
Ma'am, all well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So can I start, yeah?
Yeah, ma'am.
Before starting my webinar, I would like to wish you all who are listening me today happy International Women's Day. And I would like to thank Dr. Ritu and Dr. Vinita for organizing this webinar. So my the first slide is definition. So it is what is carpal tunnel syndrome? So it is a compressive neuropathy, which is defined as mononeuropathy or radiculopathy, which is caused by mechanical distortion produced by the compressive force. So carpal tunnel syndrome, it remains a puzzling and it's a very disabling condition commonly presented to rheumatologists and orthopedic hand clinicians only. So it was first described by Paget in 1854, and the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeon and Clinical Guidelines on the Diagnosis of Carpal Tunnel Syndrome defined it as a symptomatic compression neuropathy of the median nerve at the level of the wrist. So it was initially described as the triad of nocturnal pain. It was initially described as the triad of nocturnal pain, sensory disturbance in the distribution of median nerve, and thenar atrophy. So carpal tunnel syndrome accounts for 90% of all entrapment neuropathies and is caused by a pressure increase inside non-flexible anatomical structure. Now, what are the contributing factors for carpal tunnel syndrome? So the first of all, these are the factors in general, that what are the factors which can lead to carpal tunnel syndrome. So the first one is aberrant anatomy, anomalous flexor tendons, congenitally small carpal canal, ganglionic cyst, lipoma, proximal lumbrical muscle insertion, thrombosed artery, then infections, So infections, hypothyroidism. Okay. Sorry, I'm struggling for slides again. Inflammatory condition, connective tissue disease, GORD, pseudo-GORD, non-specific flexor tenosynovitis, rheumatoid arthritis, metabolic conditions, acromegaly, amyloidosis, diabetes, hypothyroidism, increased canal volume, congestive heart failure, edema, obesity, and pregnancy. So so these are the factors in general which can lead to carpal tunnel syndrome. So now this another slide is for carpal tunnel syndrome in pregnancy. So as we all know that pregnancy, it's a physiological process and it causes changes in the musculoskeletal system. And these changes may cause, like, as we know, pathological events like low back pain, upper pain, pelvic girdle pain, soft tissue pain syndrome, chondromalacia pateli, osteonecrosis of the femoral neck, transient osteoporosis of the hip, and leg cramps, and carpal tunnel syndrome. So carpal tunnel syndrome occurs more frequently in women and it increases in pregnancy, and it's most common moroneuropathy of pregnancy. So, but we have seen that there are many ladies who usually fail to seek consultation on these during checkups, so which may not draw the attention of most of the physician. So these conditions result in pain and limitation of the movement, which reduce the quality of the life. And unfortunately, if it's left untreated, then it may advance to a chronic state. So it's very, very important that if you're seeing any pregnant patient in the clinic, you have to take into consideration if patient regarding her wrist pain, and it needs a proper treatment. Otherwise, it can lead to many other problems. However, this carpal tunnel syndrome usually settle down after delivery, but unfortunately, there are ladies who, even after a few months or after even few years of delivery, they continue to feel pain in their wrist. Now, what are the contributing factor in pregnancy? So the first one is hormonal changes. So as we know that relaxin is the hormone which in pregnancy leads to the relaxation of the carpal, of the transverse carpal ligament, and it's leading to flattening and subsequent compression of the median nerve. And another factor that increase the carpal tunnel syndrome rate is during pregnancy. As we know that apart from relaxin, there are other hormones as well, like increased estrogen level, aldosterone, or corticols level, which and including as well prolactin, which leads to carpal tunnel syndrome. And there are ladies, because of this increased level of hormones, they usually complain of pain at night time, and which coincide with the condition known as prolactin circadian rhythm. Another factors like previously unrecognized and asymptomatic median nerve neuropathy, body habitus, and carpal tunnel size, gestational interval, weight gain, and edema during pregnancy. So this is another very contributing factor in which, like, uh, during pregnancy, where ladies get a lot of carpal tunnel syndrome symptoms or pain, which is increased water retention or edema or fluid retention, which in turn leads to the narrowing of the diameter of the carpal tunnel with subsequent median nerve compression. So carpal tunnel syndrome usually develop in the second half of the pregnancy, and it's mainly because of the, as I said, fluid retention, and it leads to a venous decrease in the venous circulation, and it causes swelling of the tissue. Another factors apart from uh, uh, which leads to carpal tunnel syndrome is repetitive activities, or sometimes it can be idiopathic as well, wrist trauma involving bony tissues, contraceptions, gestational diabetes, which also play a very important role because it leads to slowing of the nerve conduction, and occupation. And hyperthyroidism, so there are many ladies who have hyperthyroidism. They also gets the carpal tunnel syndrome, or ladies sometimes who are drinking, like alcoholism is another contributing factor. Now, I'm not going into the depth, but there is anatomy of the carpal tunnel. So, as you can see that carpal tunnel is composed, as we all know, it's composed of bony canal and it's consisting of carpal bones, which makes the floor of the tunnel, and the roof is made up of thick fibrous band, the flexor retinaculum and the transverse carpal ligament. So, through this limited opening, pass both deep and superficial tendons to all the four fingers in a common synovial sheath, and the long flexor of the thumb in its separate synovial sheath and the median nerve. So sensory branches from the median nerve supply the three radial digits and the radial half fourth digit, and that's the reason why carpal tunnel syndromes are felt in this finger. The palmar sensory cutaneous branch of the median nerve supply the cutaneous skin of the palm and arises on average 6 centimeter proximal to the transverse carpal tunnel ligament. Therefore, the palm is generally not affected in carpal tunnel syndrome. So, any encroachment on this space compresses the soft median nerve, causing the pain, paresthesias, and decreased sensation and muscle weakness. So, you can see that image. Now, what is the prevalence? So, carpal tunnel syndrome in pregnancy is reportedly 63% in the third trimester, and about 47% have bilateral carpal tunnel syndrome. So, women, especially middle-aged women, are more susceptible to carpal tunnel syndrome with 70% incident rate, and it is common, very common problem during pregnancy. So the prevalence of carpal tunnel syndrome in the United Kingdom is alone is 7 to 16%, which is much higher than 5% prevalence in the United States. And among the studied pregnant women, 19% had carpal tunnel syndrome, out of whom 47.5% were bilateral and 26.3 had severe carpal tunnel syndrome. So the prevalence in the first, second, and third trimester were 11%. 26% and 63% respectively, and 42% were asymptomatic. Now, what are the socio-economic effects? So, the median number of days away from the work due to carpal tunnel syndrome is highest in the UK. In the United Kingdom in 1995, 400,000, which is 4 lakh to 5 lakh patient underwent for surgical decompression, which equates to an economic cost of excessive of $2 billion, while UK surgical decompression rate is 43 to 74 per patient per lakh. So this amounts to a heavy burden on the National Health Services in the UK to provide care for carpal tunnel syndrome in the form of clinician time, diagnosis, and conservative management and treatment options. So the social burden of carpal tunnel syndrome is substantial, and the income loss per patient over 6 years is $45,000 to $89,000. So if you're not treating these patients, this can lead to that much of financial burden on the hospitals. Now, what are the risk factors of carpal tunnel syndrome? So, as we know that most of the time carpal tunnel syndrome, it's an idiopathic syndrome. It's idiopathic with no particular factor, but there are certain risk factors that have been associated with this condition. So the most significant of this is environmental risk factor, which is prolonged posture in extreme of the wrist flexion or extension, and repetitive use of the flexor muscle, and exposure to vibration are the primary exposure that have been reported. There is another factor which is medical risk factor, which has been divided into 4 categories. So the first one is extrinsic factor that increase the volume within the tunnel, my apologies, which is outside or inside the nerve. Intrinsic factor within the nerve that increase the volume within the tunnel. Extrinsic factor that alter the contour of the tunnel, and the neuropathic factors. Now, what are the extrinsic factor? So the extrinsic factors, which means that increase the volume within the tunnel, include conditions that alter the fluid balance in the body. So these includes pregnancy, menopause, obesity, renal failure, hypothyroidism, the use of oral contraceptive, and congestive heart failure. What are the intrinsic factors which can lead to carpal tunnel syndrome? So intrinsic factor, as we have just read recently, that increase the occupied volume inside the tunnel. So that means like if any kind of tumor or tumor like lesions can lead to carpal tunnel syndrome. Extrinsic factor, now there are another extrinsic factors like which can alter the contour of the tunnel, and it could be like a fracture of the distal radius directly or via post-traumatic arthritis. And there are some neuropathic factors as well, like diabetes, alcoholism, vitamin toxicity, deficiency, and exposure to toxin play a very important role in eliciting this carpal tunnel syndrome symptom. So this is because that these conditions can affect the median nerve without necessarily increasing the interstitial pressure within the carpal tunnel. So, and especially like if you're seeing any pregnant lady who is diabetic, like gestational diabetic, she will more prone to have carpal tunnel syndrome because of the lower threshold for the nerve damage or uh, lower nerve conduction, actually. Now, what are the classifications? The symptoms and sign of carpal tunnel syndrome has been divided into 3 different stages. So, stage 1 is where patient have frequent awakening during the night with a sensation of swollen, numb hand. They report severe pain that radiate from the wrist to the shoulder and annoying tingling in the head and the finger, which is known as brachyalgia paresthetica nocturna. Now, hand shaking, which is the flicks line, relieve the symptoms. So it is one of the typical signs which you can see in stage 1. And during the morning, a sensation of head stiffness usually persists. In stage 2, the symptoms are present also during the day, mostly when the patient remain in the same position for long time or it perform repeated movements with their hand and wrist. So when motor deficit appear, the patient report that object often fall from his or her hands because they are unable to feel their fingers anymore. Stage 3 is the final stage, which is in which there is an atrophy of the thenar eminence, which is quite evident, and the median nerve usually respond poorly to the surgical decompression. So in this phase, sensory symptoms usually diminish, and there is also aching in the thenar eminence, and with severe compression, weakness, and atrophy of the abductor pollice brevis and opponens pollice. Now, in this carpal tunnel syndrome, there is also a very atypical sign, which is known as Reiter cramp or fatigue, which is in which patient complain of pain in the shoulder only without having other symptoms, or cold sensitivity in the fingers, forearm, pain or numbness in the third finger only. And sometimes there may be no symptoms, but patient will present with visual thenar atrophy and denervation or on the nerve conduction studies. So in some instance, you will also see patients who have symptoms with rigorous activity, like usually work related. So normally they will not complain anything, but they will say that, okay, when I do certain things, then only I feel the pain. So, and those patients usually present with very minimum symptoms or objective findings. So this is known as dynamic carpal tunnel syndrome. So you have dynamic, you have Reiter cramps, where you will see the patient who are not complaining the problems all the time. Now, what are the different functional impairments that could, which most of the time patients struggle doing their day-to-day activities? Like, so patients who are having carpal tunnel syndrome, they will complain of difficulty writing, buttoning up, holding a book, holding a handset, opening a jar, or carrying a normal shopping bags, or doing household chores, showering and dressing, or difficulty in keeping the key and pen, or working on computer. So these are the things where you will see patients who usually complain of doing these type of stuff. Now, diagnosis is very, very important. So these are the guidelines. So the quality standards subcommittee of American Academy of Neurology, American Association of Electrodiagnosis Medicine, American Academy of Neurology, and American Academy of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation defined the guidelines for clinical and neurophysiological diagnosis of the carpal tunnel syndrome. So these papers stress the importance of thorough case history, which must focus on the following stages. So it's very, very important when you are taking history of the patient. These are the points you have to take into consideration. So the first one is symptoms onset, which is in the early stage is mainly nocturnal paresthesia. Another factor is you have to take into consideration what are the provocating factors, like such as hand position or repetitive movements. Working activities, like what type of work that patient is doing, like instrument use or vibrating tools. Like very simple example, if you're seeing pregnant ladies, then you can, if she's telling you that I do a lot of hoovering or garden mower, then you have to avoid those type of things which can aggravate their carpal tunnel. Now, pain localization. So another factor you have to take into, which is pain localization and irradiation. So in the cutaneous median nerve region, sometimes you will see that pain is ascending or sometimes going up to the shoulder, or patient will also complain that it's going in the downward, like descending irradiation. Another factor you have to take into consideration is maneuver, which alleviate the symptoms like hand shaking or position change. Presence of predisposing factors, you have to also take into consideration various other factors like diabetes or adiposity, and sports activities. Like there are some sports activity where which can aggravate the carpal tunnel syndrome. Now the examination. It's very important to have after taking into consideration all those factors, you have to do a proper examination, which include like assessing the sensation, thenar atrophy, weakness of the opponent pollicis and abductor pollicis brevis muscle. So patient who reported paresthesia or hyposthesia in the median nerve distribution during pregnancy, they are usually followed up at definite intervals after delivery for 1 month, then 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months postpartum. So during examination, very important, you have to check for sensation, check for muscle atrophy and weakness in this opponent pollicis and abductor muscles. And even after delivery, as I mentioned initially, that in most of the time, the symptoms settle down after the delivery, but there are ladies who continue to feel pain. In that scenario, you have to follow up the ladies for 1 month, then 3 months, or 6 months, or 12 months, or sometime depending on the condition, depending on the severity. Now, what are the important tests that we usually take or usually perform in order to diagnose the carpal tunnel syndrome? So there are several easily performed tests that when performed in conjunction with each other, they have a high level of specificity. And the purpose of these provocative tests is to detect the symptoms by increasing the intracanal pressure. So the first one is carpal tunnel compression test. So how it performs, it's a very simple test. The examiner will apply the direct thumb pressure over the median nerve at the carpal tunnel. A positive test consists of paresthesia, which is elicited within 30 seconds. Another test is positive Phelan test. So the patient places her flexed elbow on a table, allowing her wrist to fall into maximum flexion. Then patient is asked to push the dorsal surface of her hands together and hold this position for 30 to 60 seconds. So this position will increase the pressure in the carpal tunnel. In effect, the anterior, compressing the median nerve between the tarsal carpal ligament and the anterior border of the distal end of the radius. Another important test is Tinel test. So it's involved the direct percussion of the median nerve at the carpal tunnel, and reproduction of the paresthesia is considered as a positive result. So the average sensitivity of this test varies from 23 to 60%, and specificity varies from 64 to 80%. Another very important test that we use is reverse Phelan test. So the patient maintain a full position of wrist and finger extension for 2 minutes, and the pressure on the carpal tunnel increase after 10 seconds compared to 20 or 30 seconds for the standard Phelan test. The longer the position is held, the greater the pressure on the wrist and carpal tunnel. Another test is Durkan's carpal compression test. The examiner thumb is pressed on the median nerve with the thumbs of both hands for 30 seconds. The mean sensitivity and specificity of the test for carpal tunnel syndrome were 64 and 83%. So these are quite important tests that we have to perform while diagnosis or when making a decision of carpal tunnel syndrome. There are other important tests like electromyographic test, which includes like ultrasound, MRI, X-rays are the diagnostic gold standard. Although if carpal tunnel compression, Phelan test or Tinel test are all positive, there is a specificity of more than 98%. So for instance, if you're doing all the tests and if the tests are coming positive, then you don't have to request for ultrasound or MRI or X-ray. If your tests are coming positive, they all alone have the specificity of more than 98%. Apart from test and electromyographic testing, there is a hand grip dynamometer. It is mainly used to detect the hand grip and strength and measuring the maximum isometric strength of the hand and forearm muscle. It is very simple and commonly used test for the general strength level. Now, another one is functional status scale. This is a part of carpal tunnel syndrome questionnaire. It asks about 8 functional activities such as writing, buttoning of the clothes, gripping of telephone handle, etc. So each functional activity is scaled from 1 to 5, where 1 means none or never, and 5 means severe problem. Now, what are the treatments? So the treatment of carpal tunnel syndrome has been divided like conservative, medication, and surgery. So in conservative, you can see physiotherapy, yoga, acupuncture, magnetic therapy, and low-level therapy. So the first one is your conservative treatment, like physiotherapy treatment, my apologies. So the American Academy of Neurology recommends that conservative treatment is very important before making any decision of surgery. So we know that wide array of physiotherapy treatment is available, like therapeutic and non-electrotherapeutic modalities have been available in order to treat this carpal tunnel syndrome. And these treatments have different theoretical my apologies, mechanism of action, but they all have the same aim, which is to reduce the pain and improve the function. So the first very important treatment that we use in physiotherapy for carpal tunnel syndrome is the wrist splint. So splinting the wrist, it's very important to splint the wrist, but especially at the neutral angle. It helps to decrease the repetitive flexion and rotation and thereby relieving the soft tissue swelling or tenosynovitis. So splitting is mainly very effective if you are splitting the patient within 3 months of the onset of the symptoms. And if the symptoms are really bad, if the symptoms are quite bad, then it's very important to advise the patient to splint at nighttime as well. So it is usually recommended to prevent any prolonged wrist flexion or extension at night time. So and if you're wearing that splint at night time, especially for 4 to 6 weeks, then you can see a very good improvement in the relievement of the symptoms of the carpal tunnel syndrome. So the example of most of the time people use Menu hand brace, which is like you can see the view how it looks like. And this specially designed brace provide a gentle pressure to the head of the metacarpal bones and while stretching the third and fourth finger. So these are the splints. You can see the images. They are quite important. And if you are seeing any patient for carpal tunnel syndrome, you have to avoid to use this splint. Second important treatment to treat carpal tunnel syndrome is ultrasound therapy. So ultrasound therapy is quite beneficial in the longer term management of carpal tunnel syndrome. So there was a double-blind randomized trial that compared with the sham ultrasound treatment. So 20 sessions of carpal tunnel syndrome therapy administered over approximately 7 weeks in this study, which resulted in significantly greater improvement of symptoms at 2 weeks, 7 weeks, and 6 months. So ultrasound is assumed, what are the advantages? So it assumed to have thermal effect on the targeting tissues, resulting in a increased blood flow, local metabolism, and tissue regeneration. And it also reducing inflammation, edema, and pain, and thereby facilitating the recovery of the nerve compression. So there was 2 randomized controlled trial of ultrasound, which show that deep pulsed ultrasound, which is 20 treatment for 15 minutes were given, was shown to very effective in reducing the pain, paresthesias, and sensory loss, and in improving the median nerve conduction and strength. Now, apart from wrist splinting and ultrasound treatment, another very important treatment is neurodynamic techniques. So what are these neurodynamic techniques? So as we know that carpal tunnel syndrome is primarily considered as peripheral neuropathy, and there is an increasing evidence which suggests that it represents a complex pain syndrome, including sensitization effect in the central nervous system. So there are techniques like manual therapy. We can use different types of manual therapy which can modulate the sensitization mechanism by integrating the physiology of the pain and sensitization procedure in its therapeutic approach. So the desensitization maneuver, consisting of various soft tissue mobilization, nerve or tendon gliding exercises, including manual technique, which is directed at the anatomical site of the potential entrapment of the median nerve, like splenic muscle, pectoralis minor, bicipital aponeurosis, pronator teres, transverse carpal ligament. And so these are the, so the first one is, what are the neurodynamics technique? So it's a form of manual therapy which includes positioning and range of motion known to cause significant stress across the median nerve. So especially the neurodynamic techniques include like 25% of contralateral cervical side bending, ipsilateral shoulder depression and abduction to 90 degree, shoulder external rotation to 90 degree, 45% of elbow extension, forearm supination, and repetitive wrist and finger flexion and extension through the available range of motion. So this is the neurodynamic technique you use in order to treat the carpal tunnel syndrome, and this is the way you have to positioning the joints at different angles and range of motions. Now another one is neurodynamic mobilization. So mobilization with median nerve, which includes how you will do that, how you will mobilize the median nerve. So you can do a slight glenohumeral abduction, shoulder girdle depression, slight elbow in extension and lateral rotation of the whole arm, wrist and thumb, and finger extension, and finally glenohumeral abduction. So this is the way you can do neurodynamic mobilization of the median nerve. Another important technique to treat carpal tunnel syndrome is carpal bone mobilization. So you can use different techniques, and most commonly we use posterior and anterior or anterior posterior mobilization Maitland's technique. So I'm not going into the depth of that because you need different time and different webinar or face-to-face sessions for this Maitland techniques. Another technique is nervous system mobilization exercises. So after using that splint or ultrasound or neurodynamic mobilization or neurodynamic techniques, there are many exercises that we usually advise the pregnant ladies for carpal tunnel syndrome. So the first one is nerve gliding exercises. So the mobilization technique developed by Totten and Hunter in 1991, where the median nerve is mobilized by putting the hand and wrist in 6 different positions. So you can mobilize the median nerve. So this is the nerve gliding exercise. So you can mobilize the nerve in a 6 different positions. So the first one is the wrist in neutral position, where finger and thumbs in flexion. Second one is wrist in neutral position, finger and thumb extended. Then third one is wrist and finger extended, where thumb in the neutral position, wrist, finger and thumb extended, forearm in supination, And the sixth one is opposite hand applies a gentle stretch to the thumb. During this exercise, the neck and the shoulder are in a neutral position and the elbow is in supination and 90 degree of flexion. So this is your nerve gliding exercise. So another exercise which you can do is tendon gliding exercise. What is that tendon gliding exercise? So the tendon gliding exercise were position. It was also described by, so it was like flexion, flat, hook, fist, punch, tabletop, and straight fist position to make so to make wrist extension when the finger are in the hook holding position, then you have to to make a wrist extension when the finger are in hook holding position, to make a wrist flexion when the finger are loose, to make a full punch when the distal interphalangeal joints are in extension, to make the tabletop position and distal proximal and MKP joint is made to flex the joints are isolated. So these are the different ways you can do the exercises in different position. Now another one is median nerve shifting exercise. So these are also known as neural mobilization, in which the fingers are extended to the wrist in the neutral position. In the forearm supination, the thumb is stretched with the wrist extended. So what are the advantages of the nerve and tendon slip exercise? So the nerve and tendon slip exercises can relieve the ischemic pain by contributing to the median transmission of the oxygenated blood to the distal region of the wrist and hand. And for this reason, the slip exercises are recommended in the conservative management of carpal tunnel syndrome. Now, the patient who have mild to moderate symptoms, they are usually advised to, advised to provide nerve and tendon slip exercises, and especially we give in second and third trimester of the pregnancy. They are quite simple, very reliable method, and it can be applied to patient in order to increase the function of the patient and reduce the severity of the disease. So if you're seeing any pregnant patient, you can use tendon slip exercise, nerve gliding exercises, and different ultrasound and various techniques in order to treat this carpal tunnel syndrome. Now, another technique that we use most commonly is contrast bath. Contrast bath, actually, it's considered as a passive form of therapy, and it reduces fatigue, decrease muscle soreness, it reduces the lactic acid formation, it decreases the swelling and increase the blood flow. So it is conducted in a range between 37 to 43 degrees centigrade for hot baths, and for cold bath of 12 to 15 degrees centigrade, which theoretically alternate the area between the vasoconstriction and vasodilatation. So Mayer et al. 1994 demonstrate that a ratio of 4:1 was sufficient for skin temperature to react in this fluctuation, and that significant fluctuation in subcutaneous temperature signifies the peripheral circulation of the skin, which is caused by contract therapy. So that much of temperature, 37 to 43 for hot baths, and for ice 12-15 is sufficient to treat that carpal tunnel syndrome. Now another one is modification of activities in the daily life. So early treatment, which consists of for the treatment of carpal tunnel syndrome, is you have to advise the patient to change their daily lifestyle, which consists of avoidance of both position of extreme flexion and extension, as well as prolonged exposure to vibration. So example of vibration includes like driving, lawn mowing, or use of any power tools. So you have to tell the patient to avoid these type of instruments which can aggravate their carpal tunnel syndrome. Ergonomics modification, that's very, very important, because we know that people who are working in front of the computer, and there are many ladies we do get in the clinic, they work and most of them, they are sitting in front of the computer and they really struggle if they have really bad carpal tunnel syndrome. So you have to advise for ergonomics modification as well. So ergonomic interventions such as keyboard modification, which allow the hand to be used while the wrist is positioned in a straight position. So you have to tell the patient that you have to keep the hand in a straight position, which is neither flexed or extended or deviated to other side. Okay, so in this straight or neutral wrist position, why we advise for that? Because in this position, the tunnel through which the median nerve is passing get its more space. So in this position, the median nerve will get more space. So this is the most capacious position actually, in which if your patient is keeping the hand in the neutral position without flexion or extension or any other deviation. So this position is expected theoretically to place very less pressure on the median nerve. So how you can achieve that? So this can be achieved by altering the angle of tool handle on the keyboard. So you can make some adaptation or some changes. Other ergonomics intervention involve the use of forearm support and workplace modification to prevent prolonged static holding of the weight of the arm, forearm, and hand. Now, another important technique is soft tissue release, which is massage, therapeutic massage. So the first technique that we use is effleurage, which is the application of a smooth flowing stroke of the hand to the muscle, designed to relax the muscle and to promote the blood and lymph return. So effleurage is a very simple technique which you can use to release the median nerve or release any tightness in the muscle. Petrissage or kneading is another technique in which the therapist grasps and squeeze the muscle while lifting it away from the underlying structure in a continuous kneading motion, and it's designed to reduce the muscle soreness, hypertonicity, local swelling, it softens fascia and release the adhesion. Another technique is friction. Either you can do cross fiber friction massage or longitudinal friction massage, which is applied in a brisk circular or linear stroke with the thumb and finger. So the application of this technique initiate a local inflammatory response, and it intended to release adhesion and scar tissue, and it increase the circulation and deactivate the trigger point's referral pattern. Another technique is paraffin wax fast therapy. So we can use like for carpal tunnel syndrome, paraffin wax therapy is quite good. So this treatment actually improves the blood flow by its thermal effect. It improves the neural transmission and thus improving the electrophysiological result. Improve the physiologic which result during the early treatment of the patient with carpal tunnel syndrome. Another one is diet. So it's very important, like you're suggesting proper diet to the patient. So people who have carpal tunnel syndrome, we usually advise for vitamin B6 supplements. So it contributes to production. Why vitamin B6? Because it helps in producing the neurotransmitter, amino acid metabolism, synthesis and destruction of the sphingolipids. So administration of vitamin B6 as an add-on therapy for carpal tunnel syndrome has been introduced in Western countries, and it has been since 1980. So the normal dose usually advisable is 120 milligram per day for 3 months. So so these are all the physiotherapy intervention, splints, ultrasound, contrast bath, diet and adaptation, ergonomics adaptation, day-to-day adaptations. But very important thing that you can suggest to your patient like yoga. So which is also conservative management. So stretching through yoga may relieve the compression in the carpal tunnel. It improves the joint posture and it decreases the nerve compression and it improves the blood flow to the median nerve. So stretching exercises for carpal tunnel syndrome have been prescribed for the same reason, and in order to the same reason of improving the blood circulation and to mobilize the median nerve within the carpal tunnel. So the first position that we use is Tadasana wrist therapy. How to do that? It is gently rotate the wrist through the full range of circular motion, repeatedly changing the direction, and then gently shaking out the wrist for about 30 seconds. So this can be incorporated in brief form into every sun salutation. Another yoga therapy is Uttasana wrist Patri Kriyasana, which is whenever folding into Uttasana, which is when you're doing sun salutation, place the back of the wrist towards or onto the floor and make a easy fist. So this is less intense on the wrist than Padahastana. Another position that we can advise is wrist pump. So what is wrist pump? You are holding the finger of one hand with the finger of other hand. Move the wrist forward and back while resisting the movement with the opposing hand. So just try to repeat for 1 or 2 minutes if pain-free. Another yoga position is Anjali Mudra, which is like reverse phalanx stance. So press the palm and finger from the knuckles to finger point firmly together at the chest in a prayer position for 1 to 2 minutes. So this is Anjali Mudra, but also known as reverse phalanx test. And if there is a burning sensation inside the wrist joint within 30 seconds, this will indicate carpal tunnel syndrome. So another one is Phelan test. This is also yoga position, but same as of Phelan test. So reverse the position of the hands, placing the back of the wrist and hands together and press firmly for up to for a minute, and that will elicit your carpal tunnel syndrome symptom. Another technique is hand dance. So how to perform hand dance? So kneeling comfortably, place the hands down on the floor with the fingers pointed forward, then turn the palms up, then down with finger out, up with the finger in, down with finger back, up with finger back. So continuing in this fashion with every permutation of the palm up and down with finger forward, back, in and out. So these are some yoga positions that can be used for carpal tunnel syndrome. Tadasana, Uttasana, wrist pump, Anjali Mudra, Phelan test, hand dance. So you can combine all the treatment. It's not necessary that you have to give all the treatment to one patient. It's very important to have proper diagnosis, assessment, and you can choose any of the treatment or exercises the patient you're seeing. But these are the treatment that we use in our practice. There are other treatment that we advise, like I'm not going into the depth of that because I'm already late. So acupuncture, magnetic therapy, and low level therapy. And the next one is medication. So there are different medication like orally administered corticosteroids can be effective for short-term management for 2 to 3 weeks if you're taking. Local corticosteroids injections may also improve the symptoms. So such as like diuretics, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, pyridoxine, vitamin B6, and orally administered corticosteroids have been used with varying degree of success in patients with carpal tunnel syndrome. So these are the medication, anti-inflammatory injections you can use in the treatment. And the last option, the last intervention is surgery. So if the symptoms are really severe and if treatment is failing to conservative treatment, then we usually offer to have surgery. So patient who have severe sensory disturbance or there is excessive thinner motor weakness, then we advise for surgery. So carpal tunnel release surgery should be considered in patient with symptoms that do not respond to conservatory management and in patient with severe nerve entrapment as evidenced by the nerve conduction studies, thinner atrophy and motor weakness. So it is important to note that surgery may be effective even if patient has normal nerve conduction study. So patient even have nerve conduction study which are coming normal, but their symptoms are not very good. You can advise for surgical option. And that's the end of the webinar. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much for the information you have shared with us all the way from UK. Thank you very much, ma'am, for such an enlightened session.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye.
I would like to thank all the attendees and all the panelists here. Thank you so much, ma'am. This was very informative.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Anybody have any questions or anything?
No queries, ma'am.
Okay. So that's the end, yeah?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to thank everybody who are listening to me today. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Bye-bye.